Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Justice against corruption and stupidity. Never judged by dress. Switch purchase, switch jobs. Back in 1983, my high school library was a bit of a joke. It seems we never had more than 2 copies of any book the county put on its required list. What this meant was that everyone was frantically trying to get the same books to complete papers with. Before I could drive, this meant getting my poor mom to drive me to every library in the area. One day, our library started asking for volunteers to do a fundraiser to get more materials, and namely, more copies of the required books. Some of us jumped on board and sold everything from donuts to coupons. We would hold bake sales, car washes, etc. We were elated at the end of the drive when we had far exceeded our goals. We were all promised that we would have our dreams realized over the summer. The school year starts up, and we're giddy to see the new books. Imagine our dismay when we get to the library and find that most of the books are gone. Bare shelves glared at us while we went along the rows. That's when we noticed the holy grail of the library was missing, the card catalog file. In its place, 2 computer terminals. Mind you, not computers. We went to the front desk and asked the librarian what was going on. She said they'd decided to get a fancy computer system to make her job easier and cut down on theft. We were stunned because we didn't have a theft problem. Certainly some books would get lost or damaged, but not very many. The books were mostly missing because they'd been sent to a company to have security embedded in them. The worst part is the librarian overspent and therefore, you guessed it, was not able to purchase more books. We felt the shame of being used, lied to, and screwed over. It was at this point that we knew revenge was in order. It took myself and a couple of my fellow computer nerds 15 minutes to figure out what they'd done to the books. The security tag was a RF, like at a store, and the card pocket of the book. The new cards themselves had metal foil in their center. Without this foil, the tag would receive energy from the newly installed gates at the library door and set off an alarm. I decided to test our knowledge. I grabbed a reference book, threw a gum wrapper in the pocket, shoved it in my bag, and hit the door. I passed out the door without a peep from the gates. After that day, we threw our plan into action. We would steal as many books as we could and hide them in any location we could find. At first, we used storage rooms by boxing them up and soon ran out of space. We then started using empty lockers and even putting them in the ceiling on top of divider walls. By the end of the year, the librarian was getting frantic. She could not balance her inventory with the new computer system, and she was being called out on it thanks to our many complaints. Another genius move was to have the boxes labeled as other textbooks and sent to the warehouse over the summer. This was easy to do since we were the volunteers that wrote the program to do it, and we would print the labels. The librarian ended up losing her job and being investigated for fraud since there seemed to be some missing funds as well. Over the summer, the county finally spent the money to fill our book requests due to the uproar. It was not until a week before the start of school that they started discovering library books in the extra boxes several teachers received. This was just the beginning of us getting our revenge on some of the teachers. In the end, we got our revenge and the original items we worked so hard to get. And our next story. The Wrath of the Stoner Art Student. As the title says, I'm an art student. I live with my parents while I'm in college to cut living expenses. A couple of years ago, my dad had a security system installed that came with a 2-camera setup. One pointed at the side door and driveway, one pointed at the street by the front door, so you can see the cars. It has an app we all installed on our phones that gives us alerts. I also have this shed I asked my parents if I could use for most of my art as it gets messy. I would always clean up after myself, but paint still stains the carpet, and if I had to smell that tangerine floor cleaner one more time, I was gonna barf. I fixed it up a bit. It still looks crappy, but it's mine. Took about 2 weeks to set up. We also have a problem of people going through cars. A lot. Like ridiculously so. I have a crap Ford Tempo that I never keep anything important in, so I don't care. The incident. As I said, I have an art shed and I'm a student of the visual communication program at my local college. My professor had given us our term assignment, which was basic but fun. Pick a piece that was in the textbook and either write a 10-page essay on it or do a recreation with a 2-page blurb of how you copied the techniques, yada yada yada. I was stoked because Van Gogh was covered in there, and I wanted to do a piece called Cafe Terrace. It's a gorgeous piece, and I put a lot of time and effort into this thing. and smoked a lot while doing it. Haha. But one night, my phone gives me an AM alert from the security system while I'm at a small party, get-together, and I see a blurry image of 3 teens running past my side door. I think it's odd, but I wasn't home to check it out immediately. When I get home from being driven by a friend from the party, I get back to see my car door ajar, and I roll my eyes because it's annoying but not new. Then I remember the alert on my phone and went to check around the house. Check the shed last, because there's a lock on it, it'll be fine, right? I live in Canada, who's gonna break into my shed? Ha 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 ha. When I get to my shed, it's trashed. Lock on the ground, the material I hung up over the ceiling was ripped and burned. All the works of art I put on the walls were ripped down, my paint was everywhere, and my pastels were stomped on. They even broke my effing little crappy stool I nicknamed Hermit. But the worst was that my term project was destroyed, cut apart, then repeatedly smashed. 2 weeks before I had to turn that effing project in. I was livid. The revenge. I was able to get a week's extension as I emailed my professor and sent him photos, including the security alert, and contacted the police about the destruction of property. Cleanup was a couple of days. I did manage to turn my project in on time without the extension, just by not going to sleep. First one was better, but hey. I was still PO'd though. I kept thinking on ways to catch them or lure them in to scare the crap out of them, so I left change, loonies and toonies, stuff they'd go for, and 5s in my car's console, left my doors unlocked, and at the front of the house. I turned on that camera as it had been off for a while because it would go off so much, and I kept a bat in the shed at the side door. No guarantees that it'd be the same idiots, but I kept hoping. A few people picked my car, but it wasn't those turds, so I waved it off. A month later, and a few days after my final exams, I was in the shed at 2 a.m. smoking and sketching when the alert goes off. It's the front camera, and I see 3 familiar-looking blurs ransacking my car. I grab the bat, and before I set out, I hear them coming towards my shed. I flick the string of lights off and let them get closer before I jump out with a bat in hand. One of them screams so loud before they book it, and I run after them to scare them away. I'm not a very good runner and fully expect them to outpace me. But one of them cut across my front lawn and slipped on the wet grass. He biffs it, and I catch up to him and grab him by the back of his hoodie with the bat, threatening him. Were you the ones who trashed my shed? I'm sorry, I won't do it again. What the F's your name? Matthew. His name was not Matthew. Give me your effing wallet. The dude throws it, and I let go of him to retrieve it, and he runs off. Whatever. I pocketed my 5 plus what I'm assuming was another $40 of stolen money, took a look at his wallet and his high school ID, and his real name was there. I Facebooked his mom and told her what happened and emailed the school as well, mentioning I was a previous student there and was devastated that this is how the school teaches children. Haha. The mom turned up at my door with another mom and an older dude and 3 turdlings. They had to apologize to me in person. Wasn't that nice? I also think my professor gave me a few more points than I deserved on the piece I submitted because of what happened. Bless your soul, Clint. The painting was crap, but you still gave me an 82 out of 100 anyway. And our last story. Chabo Dress Guy actually does work in the building, dude. So years ago, I got a pretty sweet gig working as a security guard, shift supervisor actually, which is important, in a building downtown. It was a mixed-use building, so we had a food court, retail stores on 2 levels, as well as 5 office towers. When I first started, one of the things all the guards are taught is to treat everybody they deal with respectfully. This building did have a lot of transients and homeless people wander through, but we prided ourselves on being courteous and polite to everyone. Well, one lazy Sunday morning, I get a frantic call from one of our building operators, a guy who watches all the security cameras, telling me that I need to get to a specific bank of chairs on the 2nd floor. He's panicking, and I can't make out much of what he's saying other than one of my guards' names. I go rushing over, worried that this guard, who's a bit of a loudmouth bully, might be in a fight or something. Oh boy, do I wish that was the case. When I got there, the guard is berating an older gentleman who's seated in one of the chairs. The guy has a pile of papers and a coffee on the table in front of him and is pretty shabbily dressed. A pair of threadbare jeans, dirty running shoes, a faded and stretched out t-shirt, and leather jacket that's more scuffs than leather at this point. There's a ratty laptop bag on the floor leaning against the table. The guard is darn near purple in the face, screaming at this guy to GTF out, pointing wildly, yelling obscenities about how we don't allow pieces of garbage to live here. You've been here an hour. Move along. I walk up, tell the guard to cool his heels. Hey guard, Let's all just take a breath. What's going on here? Then I greet the gentleman in the chair and ask what seems to be the problem. The second gentleman gets 2 words out. Guard lights up on a tangent about how this homeless drug addict is loitering and needs to leave but won't get up. I shush him and try talking to the gentleman again. This time he got 4 words out before the guard interrupts again, and this time starts threatening to literally flip the chair forward to toss the gentleman onto the floor. Finally, I've had enough with the guard and tell him to go to the office and cool off, that I'll deal with this gentleman. The guard begrudgingly leaves, and I apologize to the gentleman about the guard's overreaction. Gentleman basically says, I appreciate it. I work in X tower on X floor and forgot my keys. I was waiting until my assistant arrives and can let me in. I automatically offer to let the gentleman into his office. We do it all the time and have specific protocols for it, and he accepts. So away we go to the elevator. We reach his floor, then the doors open, which is when I realize where I am. Every single night, we patrol every single office space of every single tower, except for one. On one floor, the entire space is occupied by a legal firm that's worth multi-millions, and we aren't allowed in the office. Yep, I'm standing on that floor. The gentleman steps into the floor lobby, and I have to excuse myself and go and get the key for his office. We aren't allowed to carry a copy of it, so I can let him in. And he just nods. I race down to the building operations room, snag the key, and race back as fast as I can. When I get back to the floor, I open the office door, and the gentleman invites me in as he goes to shut off the alarm. I then have to awkwardly ask him for his ID and to see his office so I can verify he's allowed to be there. He chuckles and obliges me. He's the freaking owner of the legal firm. He thanks me for letting him in, and I leave. About 20 minutes later, the president of our security company arrives on site with 2 other people, and the guard who blew a gasket is escorted off-site. Fired. As soon as I left, the lawyer, he called the manager of the building at home to have words, and the manager then called the security company, who came down personally. I got a nice compliment for how I handled things, and I learned why we had the rule of treating everybody with respect. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.